Hi, I'm Rick Crow, and this is Short Track Stories.
All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Short Track Stories. I'm Brandon Crow, nephew of host, grassroots racer, pure stock champion, Rick Crow. And this is a fun podcast that Uncle Rick has thought about for a long time. And we're finally glad to be giving it to you, the fans who have been asking for it for so long. We're going to go back to the grassroots, the West Coast racing scene. We're going to break it down. Some of the old racers, the legends that people grew up listening and idolizing, and some of the people that you might not know. And throughout the time, we're just going to share some great stories. It's going to be a good time. Right, Uncle Rick?
Yeah, excited, ready to go. Appreciate you. For those of you who don't know, Brandon is a communications grad and the voice of UVU and has done a couple of movies and a lot of good stuff. And so it's good to have him on board as a chief producer.
Absolutely. Just give me a place to stay every now and again, and that's it.
Perfect. Will do.
So, Uncle Rick, as a fresh reminder for those who remember your name growing up, how did you exactly get into the racing scene? Where did you race? When did you race? Who did you race against? Just kind of throw some names out there so people can kind of gauge.
So basically, born and raised in, actually born in Burbank, but raised in Santa Clarita. And, we grew up, 2 or 3 miles from Saga Speedway. And my mom was from Indiana, and she was a big sprint car fan. And, my dad was a big race fan, as were really all the Crow brothers. And on Saturday night in Santa Clarita in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, you could go maybe down onto to Newhall, and there was like a 2-seat theater or a 2-screen theater, a bowling alley, or Saga Speedway, until Magic Mountain opened up. So I remember as a kid, mom and dad taking us to Saga Speedway every Saturday night from the time I can even remember. We have black and white videos of the 60s, even before the track had pavement on the infield. And so, I got hooked, and we would travel around to tracks on the West Coast with my mom, big ones, little ones, Ontario, Riverside, Saugus, Mesa Marin, El Cajon, everywhere. All these tracks now are all defunct, and they're all closed. So started racing at Saugus in 1987, raced there until it closed in 96. Then we went up to Kern County, did a little bit of traveling to Orange Show and some of the other West Coast tracks, El Cajon, then Irwindale Open. We raced at Irwindale in several divisions. And so it's kind of just been a passion of mine, and something that all of us love doing, so.
Awesome. Love it. Now, throughout the time that you were racing, you rubbed shoulders with a bunch of different people, legends of the West Coast racing scene, some that are even still racing. And we're going to talk about one guy in particular, Todd Bodine, and your relationship with him. This upcoming week, he's going to do something pretty special and embark on that. And essentially, that's going to be the crux of this podcast, this first episode. But before we get there, you had a cool experience a couple weeks ago where you, your beautiful wife, Victoria, you went down to the Coliseum and you saw some NASCAR in LA in the Coliseum for the first time in a long, long, long time. How was that experience?
Well, it was amazing. The last time there was even a race at the Coliseum would have been a Southwest Tour race around the outside of the Coliseum, a road course race. There's footage on YouTube of it. Guys like Matt Crafton, who's a truck champion, Kurt Busch, who's a Winston, I say Winston Cup because I'm old school, but a Cup Series champion, was just a young kid racing in the Southwest Tour cars. it was incredible. The Coliseum has a lot of history in Olympics, and they used to race sprint cars there. I mean, there's been World Series played there. We personally are big USC fans and have uh, season USC tickets. And basically, what happened was last year, um, Jacob Ullman, he's works for Fox Sports. We were at a USC game, and he said to me, and I think it was like September of last year, he said, February 6th, you're going to be here at the Coliseum. And I'm like, what for? It's like not football season. And he goes, February 6th, my friend, you're going to be here at the Coliseum. So it took about, a month and a half to where kind of some stuff started leaking out in the press, and people were like, no way are they going to be able to do this. It'll never happen. But knowing Jacob and knowing his relationship with Fox Sports and with NASCAR, I'm like, it's going to happen, or he wouldn't have said anything. So it was an amazing spectacle. And what was most amazing about it to me is the new leadership of NASCAR is very public and very publicly oriented. And they've done a really good job at soliciting feedback and listening to feedback and trying new things. And we were amazed at the diversity that was in the Coliseum. And it's one thing to see people that say they're going to show up for a circus or a clown show, right? They're going to show up because it's a spectacle and they want to look at it. But there was massive amounts of diversity in colors that people had already chosen their driver and had, a $300 NASCAR jacket. And, so these weren't just people that showed up to see a spectacle. Granted, I'm sure there were people there that were hardcore NASCAR fans that had already picked their driver. And the diversity, to see the diversity of that was absolutely amazing. I mean, to me, it was like being at a USC game or any other sporting event we would see in California, a diverse melting pot of people. And I really thought that was an amazing thing.
Well, I know you sent me some videos, some personal videos in our little family group chat, and it was just mind-boggling and mind-blowing for me to see how they were able to get that track in there. And it was just crazy because, like you said, we've been there many, hundreds of times for football games and just watching it on TV, at least for me, because I wasn't there. But it was crazy just to see that they were able to do that. But like you said, it was a spectacle was a great word for it, and I think it was awesome to see and to bring those fans who have been wanting something like that for so long back and bringing those memories back.
Yeah, it was definitely, and it was such a well produced event by NASCAR. It was a great environment for fans to be there, and the racing was phenomenal. And to put it in perspective, I mean, from a short track standpoint, that's why we're talking about it. Short track, Saugus was a 3rd-mile oval. The Coliseum track, we walked the track on Saturday. If it was really a 1/4 mile, maybe on the outside rubbing the wall the whole way was a 1/4 mile.
Crazy.
So, that's about the size of Orange Show down in San Bernardino that is still open. It's the size of a high school track, a little bit wider. They did a good job. They partnered with iRacing and did some computer graphics of the track, and then were able to configure it through some simulators, which is great technology today, to make it good racing. And I really thought it was going to be a crash fest. The drivers just did an amazing job. I mean, it really turned out to be a fantastic show. And I haven't seen any negativity on any social media or anybody that was there, anybody that watched it. I think everybody went in thinking, this probably isn't going to be very good. But it was spectacular. It was an awesome event. And they have options to do it again. And so I'm pretty sure that they're probably going to exercise that option, as the ratings were really high and their diversity and inclusion numbers of people that were introduced to the sport were very high as well. So it was a win-win for everybody.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Uncle Rick, all right, let's get down to the nitty gritty here. What's going on with your buddy Todd Bodine?
So Todd is, he's an old school racer as well. And so he and I have developed a really good relationship, close friends. And he had mentioned to me that he was 6 races away from a milestone of 800 starts in the top 3 NASCAR series, which would be, the Xfinity series and the truck series and, the Cup cars. And I think that the list is like 28 drivers in NASCAR history. And it's a pretty, there's some surprises on the list. Like Victoria and I were going through it, and she was asking me, and I mean, there's some that you're going to get, but there's some that you're really surprised, because you just didn't realize it takes a lot of dues paying to get to 800 starts, right?
Give us some of those names.
Oh, I don't even remember. I would, I think Jeff Gordon was one of them that kind of surprised me. I made some guess, and she's like, nope, nope, nope. I think Michael Waltrip was one of the guys, which really surprised me. I mean, I could go through a name, like I could get pretty close for most of them. But, Michael Waltrip, that kind of surprised me. Jeff Gordon, that one surprised me. I knew like Darrell Waltrip, guys like Waltrip and Elliott, Petty, and, Mark Martin, some of the old guys, Labonte, Marcus, Rudd. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this list that you would think, oh, I can't believe they're on it, and I can't believe they're not on it. And so it's very interesting. To me, it's a milestone. To me, Todd belongs in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. He's got 2 truck championships. He's a racer, hardcore, came up through the grassroots, and represents the sport in always a classy way with his fans and everything. And he's one of the most humble people that I've ever met. Usually racers are pretty quick to toot their own horn, and there has to be a certain amount of cockiness and arrogance to go in for really any championship or elite athlete. And so Todd had mentioned it. I want to get to this start, and I didn't let him like just mention it and let it go away. I stayed on him with it, and I started bugging some people. I started making some Twitter posts to companies or people that I felt like might be interested. His nickname's the Onion, so I tried to get Outback Steakhouse to jump on board, right? But I never heard back. I never heard back from them, and so eventually, Marcus Lemonis from Camping World and Good Sam, and a multitude of other things. His show, The Prophet, is a great show. He basically tweeted to Todd after being badgered a little bit. I heard you're close to getting to 800 starts. And then he put out a challenge that if we could get 800 people to hashtag his company with this tweet, he would pay the bill to put Todd in the truck to get him to 800.
That's awesome.
And so at that point, it was on. So I wasn't gonna let him miss at that point. Him and his wife Janet are such nice people. They're huge Notre Dame fans, And so I went to the Notre Dame fan base, right to the Notre Dame football website. And I'm like, hey, you guys, retweet this and use this hashtag and, help Todd get back in a truck. And, the Notre Dame faithful responded, and Todd's NASCAR fans responded. And when I got a hold of Todd, because Todd kind of just put it out there in a humble fashion. And when I got a hold of Todd, and I'm like, Todd, the analytics on this, it's gonna get done. And he's like, no, I don't. I go, Todd, you have thousands of people, whether they used the right hashtag or they didn't. If you look at the analytics under impressions and retweets and all that, you have thousands of people that love you and want to see you, come back out in a truck and put on a show. And so it even took a little while to convince him that he's just so humble to convince him that this was going to happen. And then Marcus stepped up, in a big way and said, hey, let's do it. And so he's going to be flying the Camping World colors. He wanted to do it in a Toyota. So Toyota has stepped up. But I think one of the biggest people that have stepped up are the Friesen, Stuart Friesen, who drives a truck, who is a friend of Todd's, Hallmark Racing. They are providing Todd with their team truck. So he will actually have a team truck with him. He'll have a backup truck. And he's going out just as if he was still 30 years old, and good equipment. And, I tell him, hey, let's just go out and have a good time. And he's like, hell no, man, I'm going to go out and race, So I'm like, all right, let's go. And as it gets closer, he's getting more excited, which gets me more excited. And I can't wait.
How crazy is that, just to see the response from all those people, and to see, I think it's funny what you brought up of how here he is, he has this thing, this goal, and he's thinking about it, otherwise he wouldn't have brought it up. And then he mentions it, and then all of a sudden it happens. Do you think that he feels like a little bit of oh crap, what I get myself into?
It's funny that you asked that, because he has 44,000 Twitter followers, right? What does that make him, like a huge influencer or something? Like he's probably making $1 million a month off pitching Maui gyms and Hayward pool equipment on his Twitter account or something, right? At this point. I think, man, I'm going to tell you, if it was me, I'd be having a moment like, oh crap, like I'm going to stub my toe or something and pretend I can't do it.
Sure.
But for as humble as Todd is, he's also a pro, right? And he's also confident. The trucks haven't changed a lot over the years. They haven't changed a lot since he has been in the trucks. I'm probably a little skewed when I look back, and I think that when he competed in trucks, he competed against some of the best truck racers to ever, strap it inside of a truck, and he beat them and ran with them. So he hasn't let on that he is nervous at all. Honestly, I think he's like a silent assassin, right? I think in his mind that he's going to go out there and he's going to run up front. And I honestly think in his mind that he is going to, and he might pull win off on one of these 6 races, which would just be freaking amazing. And if so, look for it to come at Texas.
Okay, that leads me to my next question for you is, so what is the race this weekend? How can people tune in? And then what are the other races? Because I believe there's 6, right? There's 6 races in total. And what are the other races that he's going to be racing in?
Oh, now you're killing me. So the 6 races are Vegas this weekend. And then he's racing Nashville. He's racing Texas. He's racing Sonoma, which is an interesting pick on his part, because that's a road course. And so that's really interesting, because typically, um, back at that time, NASCAR drivers didn't get a lot of road course work. And a lot of times teams brought in other drivers to race the road course. So, yeah, so it's, in Darlington, the Lady in Black, like that's a historic track.
And then Pocono, right? Didn't he? Is he racing Pocono?
Going home, that's his last race. He's from Chemung, New York. Pocono is basically where all his hometown folks will come up. I believe his wife Janet is from up around that area, and we're going to end it all in Pocono with a big golf tournament. I think it's called the Onion Slice Open, and so it's going to be interesting. So there's going to be some charitable aspects mixed into some of this too. Came up with some exciting stuff to do with some of his pit boards and some other things. It's just been on such a short notice. We haven't been able to work out the details yet, but I know he's working on that. He wants to engage his fan base at each track, and he wants to do some charitable things. And him and his wife Janet are very involved in charitable activities, and they're just really good, salt of the earth, people. I mean, the first time that I ever talked to him and met him and went, they wanted us to stay at their house. Like, they invited me to stay at his house. And to me, that like Tom Brady wouldn't invite somebody to stay at his house, right? Todd Bodine is like front doors open, his pool's open. Come on over. It's cool. It's cool.
It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun to watch him and to see what he can do. Just in some recent interviews, I know he's mentioned how excited he is, and kind of like what you said, where he started off being a little bit nervous, but then as he gets into the groove or gets back into doing what he was so used to doing, getting tuned up with his fire suit and doing all that stuff. He's just getting ready to roll, ready to rock out there. And I know you're going to be. Are you going to all 6 races of his?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
Okay. So we'll be keeping track here on the short track stories podcast. We'll dive right in with the Todd Bodine experience over the next year or so, and see how he does with those 6 races that he entered. And we'll also dive into some of the older and some of the more legendary racers that people might not know if they're kind of new to this area, but for the people that grew up with it, they definitely know they're the cornerstones essentially of this racing community. So Uncle Rick, just before we end this first episode here, give us a little teaser of some of the people that you are going to be reaching out to and some of the people that could be future guests on this show.
So I'm going to try to get them all. We have a lot of requests for people to talk to, and it's funny because the requests go from, guys my age that we just have a lot of funny stories, to legends, right? And so and you and I have been talking about doing this for quite some time. And one of the big reasons that I wanted to do this was because there's all these podcasts that are, Dale Jr.'s podcasts and all these podcasts on the East Coast. And everybody knows the history of the Earnhardts and the Labanis and the Waltrips and those people. But what has been lost in the NASCAR, in my opinion, history, is the short tracks built NASCAR. When NASCAR wanted to go on a big revenue generating kick, they came to all the short tracks and said, do you want to join NASCAR? And we all paid to join NASCAR, and that boosted NASCAR into the next hemisphere. But what has happened is all these tracks in, say, on West Coast California, and we're not just talking California, you know, we're talking from Washington and Oregon, Ontario and Riverside. These West Coast guys used to go compete with the Pettys and the Earnhardts at Ontario, at Riverside, places like that. And what I started finding with Facebook pages and some other things is that the kids of those guys, and sometimes the grandkids of those people, are saying, oh yeah, does anybody know any information on my grandfather? He used to race at Saga Speedway from 1945 to 1955 or whatever. And people would chime in and say, yeah, I think I remember him, or I lettered his race car, or he was a legend. And then when it really hit me hard, a family that I know really well, the Minties, Pat Minty Sr., was a guy that was really a staple on the West Coast. Him and Lauren Spangler and some people like that have passed away, Mike DiMarzo, without telling their history and their story. And I feel like some of the guys that have come from the West Coast, and I'm not going to call them out right now, but I will. Some of the guys that have made it big that came from the West Coast have done a poor job at saying, this is my history. This is where I played the Little League, right? This is where I cut my teeth. This is whose couch I slept on. This is who helped me get where I'm going. And then I think that there's also a lot of guys that are left on the West Coast, for instance, like a Sean Woodside, that had he packed up and moved to North Carolina, he'd be just as big a star as anybody else. But his family was here, his work was here, and he stayed here. And so I think that all these people have something to contribute, not just from funny stories, but I want to hear about Riverside. I want to hear about Ontario. I want to hear about Mason Marin. I want to hear about Saga Speedway. Funny stuff, good stuff we don't know. But I'd like for some of these kids and grandkids and drivers that are my age to get some stuff on the record for future generations before it's all lost. And unfortunately, we've already lost a lot of the good storytellers that could have taught us a lot about our history out here. So I'm excited about it. That's what motivates me to do it. I appreciate you helping me do it, and I can't wait to start lining up some of these drivers, fans, owners, everybody. We want to hear everybody.
It's going to be a fun time, and I know I've talked to you about it, and eventually these short track stories we're going to put into a documentary, and it's going to be great, another piece of evidence for these people and these families to have. But I can't wait. It's going to be fun. Episode 1 officially in the books. Uncle Rick, ready to roll?
Ready for Vegas. Go get 'em onion.
All right, that was episode 1 of Short Track Stories. If you like what you're hearing, follow us on Instagram at Short Track Stories. We're going to be posting this on YouTube. It'll be available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Again, I'm Brandon Crow and my Uncle Rick. So long, everybody. We'll chat with you next time.